let's talk sentence types. We've got 4 different types of sentence that whether you know them or not, you do use in your writing. You always use either simple, compound, complex, or compound complex sentences. And here's some tricks when we're talking about identifying the types of sentences that you're using. The first is to be able to identify all the subjects and all the verbs that exist in your sentences, because that's really going to be the key to determining what kind of sentence you have. The other trick, short doesn't always mean simple. So don't just default if you see a short sentence to say this is a simple sentence. And then finally, variety is the spice of writing, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But let's talk about the different sentence types first. The first sentence type that you've got is a simple sentence, and it is like it sounds. It contains just one independent clause. So when you're looking at this sentence, Susie and Sally went horseback riding. You're going to identify your subject, and it's compound here, but Susie and Sally is still just one subject. And what did they do? They went horseback riding. So you've got one subject, one predicate, it means it's one independent clause, you've got a simple sentence. All right? If you want to get a little bit fancier, you can go to compound sentences, and that's 2 independent clauses joined together, and there's a variety of ways that you can join them. So let's take a look at this example. We've got the first sentence, Susie and Sally. So we already said that was a subject, went horseback riding is a predicate, but then we've got a comma and the word and, which is a conjunction, joining that first sentence to then they went out to dinner. We've got another subject, they, and what did they do? They went out to dinner. So we've got 2 independent clauses being joined by that comma and the conjunction. 2 independent clauses makes it compound. All right. Next up, we've got complex sentence types. And that's when you have one independent clause added to one dependent clause. So it's just a little bit of a different style. Let's take a look at this sentence. Because Susie and Sally had been out all day, they were famished. So if we look at the sentence, this comma kind of draws us to a split in it. And what you'll notice is this side here, they were famished, can stand on its own. We've got a subject, they, and then we've got a full predicate, were famished. So we've got an expression of complete thought. It can stand on its own. We call that an independent clause. And then if we look up here, we have because Susie and Sally had been out all day. Now, what we notice about that is it's got a subject, Susie and Sally, and it tells us what they've been doing. They'd been out all day, so we've got a predicate, but we've got a subordinating conjunction here that starts it off, which makes that a subordinate or a dependent clause. So when you've got a dependent hooked to an independent, you've got a complex sentence. And then finally, and probably the sentence type you'll use the most sparingly, is a complex compound sentence. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a combination of a compound and a complex. So you've got 2 or more independent clauses, like the compound sentence, hooked up to one dependent clause. So we've got when Susie and Sally ordered dinner, their eyes were bigger than their stomachs, so they had lots of leftovers. So if we start looking at the splits here, we've got commas, and that generally tells us that there's a split in the sentence. So we've got a comma here and here. Let's take a look at this first part. When Susie and Sally ordered dinner, we've got a subject. What did they do? They ordered. But we've got this subordinating conjunction here. So we know that when we got a subordinating conjunction at the beginning of a clause, that makes it a dependent clause. So there's our dependent clause. And then we have their eyes were bigger than their stomachs. The subject is their eyes. The eyes were busy being bigger than the stomachs. That can stand on its own. So we've got an independent clause there. And we have this combination again, the comma and the conjunction, so that are hooking up, they had lots of leftovers. Again, they is our subject, had is our predicate, and the thought is complete with lots of leftovers. So we've got another independent clause. So 2 independent clauses hooked up to the dependent clause makes the compound complex sentence. Now, I know a lot of you guys may be wondering, well, why is it important that I know the sentence types? I write my sentences, and that should be good enough. So why do I have to spend time figuring out what kind of sentence they are? And what I want to take a look at is a chart that looks like this. This is what I really recommend you using in order to kind of put this knowledge to use. I would, in every paper that you write, draw up a chart here. So I give it 3 columns, and for each sentence, I know this might be tedious, but you'll be surprised at what it reveals. For each paragraph, start plugging in your sentences. Write down the first 3 words of each sentence, tell me what type it is, and then write down the number of words. What you'll start to see is a lot of patterns here. You might be really prone to using compound sentences all the time, or you might start all your sentences with the same 3 words. So this chart will help you reveal what I said at the beginning, that variety is the spice of writing. So you can use this and use your knowledge of sentence types in order to mix it up and make sure that you're keeping your readers on their toes as they go.